Shabbat Shalom. Welcome to Kol Hadash at the North Shore Unitarian Church. It's a pleasure to see you here this evening for our annual Pride Shabbat that provides a good reminder. Please make sure all your cell phones or anything else that might go off are on airplane mode, silent, or otherwise not going to disturb the service. This evening we'll be talking about pride under persecution. It's been a very difficult time to be either affiliated with or friendly with or supportive of the LGBTQ plus community. But the theme of our service tonight will be about standing up, but also about standing together. Part of the reason we come together on Shabbat is to feel the support and the solidarity of community, to feel that we can celebrate with like-minded people and people that share our values and our approach to life. So we'll begin our service on page 1. Let me share the, no, there's a Shabbat Shalom from someone online as well. Let me share our service and we'll begin. We start with a nigun, which is a melody where the melody is more important than the words. In fact, bim and bam don't mean anything in Yiddish or in Hebrew, but they're a chance for us to sing together and connect to each other. So as you feel comfortable, please join me. Bim bam, bim 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 bam, bim 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 bam, bim bam, bim 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 bam, bim 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 bam. Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat 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 shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat 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 shalom, Shabbat 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 shalom, Shabbat 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 shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat 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 shalom. Bim bam, bim 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 bam, bim 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 bam. Just hum. More than the Jewish people has kept Shabbat, Shabbat has kept the Jewish people. Shabbat is a unique contribution to world culture. Other peoples have observed days without work or times for special gatherings. But stopping one day out of every 7, when even children, animals, and servants do not labor, is a Jewish original. To be sure, how we stop and why we stop has changed. For some, detailed restrictions and obligations consume the day and restrict freedom. Others use the opportunity to explore Jewish identity, family time, or the importance of rest and recreation. As for why, even the Torah cannot decide. The book of Exodus says that Shabbat echoes divine creation of the world, while Deuteronomy claims it recalls the end of Egyptian slavery. Why has Shabbat survived when animal sacrifice and the Jerusalem temple are long gone? Because Shabbat meets human needs: reflection, community, silence, solidarity. Shabbat connects us with our past and gives us time and space in the present to prepare for the future. I invite us to pause for a moment of silent reflection, to breathe, to let go of the cares of the week, and simply to be together. A traditional song for the last several hundred years, welcoming Shabbat, is called Lecha Dodi, Come My Beloved to Greet the Bride, written in the 16th century. If you know it, please sing.
Likrat kalali Shalom Amavora.
We are creatures of light. Our sun provides the energy plants use to make oxygen. It warms our fragile planet just enough to sustain life. It reflects off the moon to define the calendar of Jews and of the world, and to light the way through darkness. We are creators of light. For generations beyond count, we have freed ourselves from depending on sun, moon, and stars. When life is dark or sad, we create the light we need, alone and together. Warmth, inspiration, enlightenment, community, these are the lights that guide us. And to light our Shabbat candles this evening, I'd like to invite our Oneg hosts, Julia and Victoria Ratnaswamy, to come forward as we sing Baruch HaOr, Let Us Light These Lights.
Shabbat, Baruch HaOr, Shalom, Baruch HaOr, Baruch HaOr, Shabbat, Baruch HaOr, Shalom. Let us light these lights and see the way to joy, and let us say Simcha. Let us light these lights and see the way to love, and let us say Ahava. Let us light these lights and see the way to peace, and let us say Shalom. Let us light these lights and see the way to peace, and let us say Shalom. And let us say Shalom.
We draw strength from each other. We draw sustenance from the earth around us. And we find wine represents the intersection of human and nature. We could not make wine all by ourselves out of chemicals and vats. Maybe we could, but it wouldn't be the same. But we also cannot simply take the grape in the wild. It does not become wine by itself. It becomes wine because of what people do, individually and together, to add richness and depth to the sweetness. So this evening, I'll sing our Kiddush blessing in Hebrew. If you'd like to join me, please do, and then we can say the English all together. Baruch HaOr Ba'olam, Baruch HaOr Ba'adam, Borei Pri Hagafen. In English, blessed is the light in the world, blessed is the light of humanity that brings forth the fruit of the vine. L'chaim, to life. I am a child of wanderers in the desert, herders of sheep, seekers of water. I am a child of slaves, toilers in the baking sun, builders of monuments to the mighty. I am a child of warriors, defenders of their people, cruel victors over others. I am a child of prophets, speakers of truth or power, hard fanatics of a jealous God. I am a child of seekers after truth, scholars of ancient texts, mystics and dreamers. I am a child of farmers and vintners, glassblowers, goldsmiths, bookbinders, and tailors. I am a child of poets and singers. I am laughing and hungering for wisdom and light. I am a child of victims and martyrs. I am a child of those who fought back. I am a child of Hasidim, open to the mystery of the cosmos. I am a child of the Enlightenment, discovering the secrets of the universe. I am a child of the Jewish people, heir to its riches, owner of its treasures.
הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, לה 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 לה. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, לה 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 לה. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, לה 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 לה. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת אחים גם יחד.
With all our heart and all our spirit, all our senses and strength, we take upon ourselves and into ourselves these promises: to care for the earth and those who live upon it, to pursue justice and peace, to love kindness and compassion. We will teach this to our children through the passage of the day, as we dwell in our homes and as we go on our journeys, from the time we rise until we fall asleep. And may our actions be faithful to our words, that our children's children may live to know truth and kindness have embraced, peace and justice have kissed and are one. Our next song is a celebration of Jewish courage dating back to the Second World War, written in response to the Warsaw Ghetto Rebellion in the Vilna Ghetto. Zognit Kainmol, never say you're on the final road.
Sag nie keinmal, als du gehst dem letzten Weg. Hoch im Ländlein verstellen bläue Tag. Kommen wird noch unser ausgebänkte Schau. Es wird abheugt und unser Trott mehr seinen da. Kommen wird noch unser ausgebänkte Schau. Es wird abheugt und unser Trott mehr seinen da. Never say that you are on your final road, though overhead dark skies of lead may death forebode. The long-awaited hour surely drawing near, when with a roar our steps will thunder, we are here. The long-awaited hour surely drawing near, when with a roar our steps will thunder, we are here.
Hope. Hope is a choice, never found, never given, always taken. Some wait for hope to capture them. They act as the prisoners of despair. Others go searching for hope. They find nothing but the reflection of their own anger. Hope is an act of will, affirming in the presence of evil that good things will happen, preferring in the face of failure self-esteem to pity. Optimists laugh even in the dark. They know that hope is a lifestyle, not a guarantee.
Sachaki, Sachaki, ol hachalomot, zu ani hacholem sach. Sachaki kiva adam amin, ki odeni ma'amin bach. Sachaki kiva adam amin, ki odeni ma'amin bach. Laugh at all my dreams, my dearest. Laugh and I repeat anew that I still believe in people, as I still believe I still believe in you.
For generations, our people spoke of the tradition as perfect and everlasting. They extolled the Torah as a tree of life, filled with eternal truths. That's my mind. Huh? That's on, okay. Filled with eternal truths to which we must hold fast in all times and ages. Experience has schooled us in a different story. There are no precepts or wisdom that endure forever. People change, societies mature, needs expand, cultures adapt. This precludes any source of ultimate righteousness that is true and altogether just. Our messy reality demands of us an acknowledgement that righteousness and justice lie not in a book or in some mysterious realm beyond our reach. The burden of the fate of humanity is ours alone to bear. Even the rabbis of old understood that all the Torah study in the world would never be enough to make a difference. The human condition can only improve by the work of our own hands. May we create a world based on truth, justice, and peace.
Al shalosha devarim, al shalosha devarim, al shalosha devarim, halam omeid. Al shalosha devarim, al shalosha devarim, al shalosha devarim, Olam omeid. Al hadin ve'ahemet ve'al shalom. Al hadin ve'ahemet ve'al shalom.
We are heirs to a legacy of American Jewish courage. There are times when life is easy, when courage is not needed, when our future of freedom and opportunity seems limitless. We are at ease in our houses and jobs, in our physical and financial security. We also know that there are times to stand with others. Generations of Jews struggled for rights not only for themselves, but for all people. Our ancestors came here seeking the freedom to live, work, and believe as they chose, and they accepted the responsibility of ensuring those freedoms for all. May we be worthy of their legacy of standing up and standing together. If you are comfortable standing up, could I ask you to please stand for just a moment? At our congregation, once each month, when we gather together, we create a space for memory and for love. This evening we remember with great love Roseanne Novak, who passed away earlier this month. And we also remember those of our extended family of loved ones, the anniversary of whose death or whose yahrzeit occurs in this season. Tonight we remember Naomi Abend, Laura Adelson, Jim Arnold, Diane Oshman, Tammy Bellinger, Charles Bernstein, Dolores Century, Myrna Cohn, Larry Deutsch, Muriel Diamond, Ann Dorfman, Irving Fishkin, Larry Ira Friedlander, Edwin Friedlander, Josephine Friedman, Marvin Gibson, Lillian Goldberg, Franz X. Grunbauer, Hai Gorolnik, Danny Hart, Glicka Hepner, Nancy Jansen, David Kessler, Sarah Kessler, Gregory Koalenko, Rose Lambert, Roberta Levitt, Lillian Lieb, Charles Lippitz, David Lyman, Harry Nissenson, Marion O'Neill, Louise Ogle, Rita Ostrovskaya, Louis Podolin, Linda Randall, Sidney Robin, Herbert Rosen, Bernice Shepard, Gregory Smith, Miriam Sohn, Dick Spector, Mary Lou Spencer, Lester Teach, Mort Trachtenberg, and Harriet Wiederhorn. Let us pause for a moment of silent tribute in their memories and in memory of all of our loved ones. In Jewish life, we say, Zecher Tzadikim Livracha, the memory of good people, is a blessing to us. Please be seated as we hear a song of love.
Shima'u, Shima'u, Ahave, Ahava, Kira'u, Kira'u, Mashiach, Yeshua,
To my left is our congregational menorah. Its 7 lights remind us of the 7 days of the week, but also the many strands of our lives that come together as one community to share the ups and the downs. In the Unitarian tradition, they call these candles joys and concerns. To make it Jewish, we call it something Jewish. So it is simchas and suras. Simchas are joys, suras is difficulty. It's a chance for us to share what's going on in our lives. It could be a candle of joy and celebration of something wonderful. It could be a candle of memory for someone whose absence is felt in your life, or a candle of concern for someone facing a difficult time. And so here, I step back and open it to you. If you'd like to step forward here and light a candle, please do speak in the mic so those online can hear. And then also those online can be part of this as well. I see that Ron and Tamar have a hand up, so go ahead, Ron.
Hi, Rabbi Adam. Shabbat Shalom. I have a sharing of joy that has been immense since I had my hip replacement surgery on May 26th. Nothing but good has come to me. I experienced life in a much higher degree. My family is still getting used to the new Ron, but I've gotten validation from many sources that I've turned the corner. So I'm apologetic that I'm not there tonight. I'm not driving yet. However, I will see you all soon because I do plan on attending the 25th anniversary of Kol Hadash, a week from Sunday.
It's on Saturday, not Sunday. Yep. Thank you, Ron. Anyone? Bill, please.
I have a diverse comment for family members who are ill. I'm wishing their speedy recovery. For family members who are part of the gay community, I hope that their life is good, not only this month, but for all time.
Okay. So we've had a lot going on in our household. Lots of project stuff. We currently have the vanity from one of our bathrooms sitting in our living room because we had to have a mold remediation thing, and now I'm waiting to hear from the reconstruction department. So life has been interesting on multiple levels lately. And so it's kind of a mixed bag for me.
And for me too.
Thanks for sharing. Yeah, Rick, please.
It's right there. Nah, blend it in.
My son and daughter-in-law bought a new house and moved in yesterday. They moved 60 miles away, next to her mother's house and her father's house, next to her sister, far away. I'm not very happy. But I thought about all the people who have children in California and Alaska and Georgia, and our son's wife is wonderful, and the kids are great. And I am so happy they didn't go, well, they moved to Geneva, Illinois. I'm so happy they didn't go to the other Geneva.
I'm doing this for my dad, Gregory.
Light, do one and the other.
First. Gregory Kolenko was mentioned today, who was my dad, who was my adoptive dad, married my mom when I was 2 years old, and gave me the gifts of music and singing and dancing. He was Ukrainian, by the name, means blacksmith, is a very common name in Ukraine. And he suffered, of course, under Stalin, went to Siberia, etc. Thought he lost his family, but much later, when I was with him and in my late teens, early 20s, we did some research and we found actually his son and his son's children. And so he became a grandpop, long distance, and we sent gifts and money. At that time, it was under the Soviet Union, was difficult, and he wasn't in the best of health by that time. Never was able to go back to Ukraine. I have not been there either. But anyway, I just wanted to remember him because of the gift of dance and music, poetry. He didn't finish much schooling, but he did all of that and gave me those gifts. So thank you, Gregory Kolenko.
This week, I'm happy to be able to say my whole family has gotten settled into our immediate future. My daughter, who had been practicing law for about 25 years, a year ago decided she didn't want to do that anymore. She's now completing a master's in education, and she got placed right here in Wheeling at a junior high school as a student teacher next year. My granddaughter just finished her master's in education at Boston College, and as of 3 days ago, she now has a job at a junior high school in Wheeling. My grandson, who is a chemistry student, had a summer position actually at a research group, a medical research group out in Oregon, and unfortunately it fell through at the last minute. But as of last week, we've got him relocated. No, actually in San Miguel de Allende. He's going down next week, working with the arsenic and water group in one of the local water groups. So they're all happily either employed or, well, do you call it employed when they're not getting a salary, but busy working in the right stuff.
Not usually allowed fire. Both of my wife's grandmothers were on the list today, including her namesake. But more importantly, her father, my father-in-law, Lester Teach, who passed away very, very suddenly 26 years ago, and really was quite an individual, and I'm grateful for him every day. But passed away, one of those here and gone. But we remember Lester.
Thank you. When you walk through a storm, hold your head up high, and don't be afraid of the dark. At the end of the storm is a golden sky and the sweet silver song of a lark. Walk on through the wind, walk on through the rain, though your dreams be tossed and blown. Walk on with hope in your heart, and you'll never walk alone. You'll never walk alone. Walk on with hope in your heart, and you'll never walk alone. You'll never walk alone.
When the Stonewall National Monument is told to take down the pride flag by the Department of the Interior, that happened this year. When Deerfield Elementary and Middle School, the district is required to spend $360,000 defending its trans youth acceptance and inclusion policies, as reported in the Sun Times this week. Thank you, Alana, for forwarding that. When in December of 2024, the chairman of the NCAA, Charlie Baker, testified that he knew of only 10 transgender athletes competing in college athletics from among 510,000 total athletes. If you do the math, that's 0.002%. 10 out of 510,000, and yet the panic, the bans, the legislation, the lawsuits. Among all the anti-diversity cancellations, initiative bans, the grants to organizations and researchers gone, we've seen it. We know it's happening. And there's even been a threat by Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas to take a step backward and reconsider constitutional recognition of same-sex marriage, or even the decriminalization of what they call sodomy. We're in Pride Month in June, and Pride Month tries to celebrate progress, achievements, milestones, acceptance, and motivate still more of the same. But it feels like we're taking a step backwards, or at least some people are trying to drag us backwards. And if we manage to just stay on the treadmill with constant effort, that feels like the most we can achieve at the moment. Even public opinion polls show the change. In 1996, according to the Gallup poll, in 1996, only 27% of Americans said that same-sex marriages should be valid. There was a steady climb. By 2011, it was over 50% acceptance. It was past 60% acceptance by 2015, only 4 years later. And in 2022, another 6 years later, 7 years later, it was over 70% of Americans accepting same-sex partnerships and marriages. Similarly, in the 20 years from 2002 to 2022, when they asked, are gay and lesbian relations morally acceptable? That number went from 2002 at 40% to 70% in 2022. And some of the others were unsure. It wasn't all negative. But today, those numbers have actually gone down from that peak in 2022. Now it's in the mid to low 60s for acceptance on both questions. It's not as bad as 1996. It's certainly not 1976. But it's not as good as 2022. Now, the support of independence, if you break it out by political preference, the support of independence has tracked the overall national pattern, generally going up and a little bit down. And Democratic support on both questions today is still over 80%. But for Republicans, it's dropped. At that peak, it was around mid-50% acceptance. Now it's in the mid-30% for both gay marriages and also moral acceptability in just 4 years, from 2022 to today. And when Gallup asked more recently, is changing your gender morally acceptable? Only 5% of Republicans agreed, along with 42% of independents and 60% of Democrats. And again, just 5 years ago, in 2022, it was 22% of Republicans, 48% of independents, and 67% of Democrats. So we've definitely taken steps back. And by the way, even Democrats have taken some steps back. And also note how much room for improvement remains. Even today, 4 in 10 Democrats either don't know or think that changing one's gender is morally unacceptable. And that's morally unacceptable. And yet, we also need to recognize and draw inspiration from how far the world has changed. Even go back 80 years, let's say to the 1940s. There was absolute and intense persecution of anyone outside of the heterosexual norm in the mid-20th century. The assumption was you had a psychological disorder. There was a moral perversion. You may know the story of Alan Turing in the United Kingdom after helping to solve the Enigma puzzle and win the war. Because of his homosexuality, because of his gayness, he was chemically castrated, was the term they used at the time, ultimately likely committing suicide. And in America, we had the similar problem, what they called the lavender scare. There was the Red Scare from the communists, but there was also the lavender scare of the risk that people off the straight and narrow, so to speak, would pose. And so the goal was to purge the American bureaucracy of security risks and communists. And it was assumed that if you were gay, you were a blackmail risk and therefore a security risk. And so in the United States Armed Forces from 1943, homosexuals were banned. And in 1953, Eisenhower issued an executive order that banned gay workers in the federal government. Some 5,000 workers were not only fired, they were outed at the same time because of why they were fired. And that was in effect, by the way, for the next 20 years. It wasn't until the mid-70s that it finally began to be rolled back. In that era, there was no protection from police entrapment, no protection against job or housing loss, and of course, family rejection was rife. It's one of the reasons why in major cities, safe neighborhoods began to appear, whether it was the Castro in San Francisco or Boys Town here in Chicago. These were bubbles. These were ways to find community for people who had been cut off from everything else. There were even some small advocacy groups dating back to the 40s and 50s, like the Mattachine Society, which you may have never heard of, or the Daughters of Bilitis, which you also may not have heard of. The names were obscure on purpose because they couldn't be out front with what they were advocating for. And to be fair, many of the founders of the Mattachine Society actually were in the Communist Party of the United States, so they also had an overlap. And then in 1969, we had the Stonewall so-called riot, which was a raid on a club. It was very common that gay clubs would actually be owned by the mob because they were already on the edges and they could pay off the police to stay open. But in this case, it was a mob-owned bar in Greenwich Village that was raided by the police. Many arrests were made and protests ensued. The next year, on the anniversary of that, was the first Pride Parade in Chicago and elsewhere in the world. This began an era of trying to change the conversation from hiding and advocating behind masks to, as they say, coming out, saying who you were, living your truth. And there were some anti-discrimination laws that were able to be passed. And there were examples of, let's say, secularized Jews who may not have found acceptance in the organized Jewish community, but who could proclaim who they were in both their Jewishness and their secular approach to life and their gayness. Think of Harvey Milk in San Francisco. But there was also a backlash. In 1977, Miami-Dade County passed an anti-discrimination ordinance. And then Anita Bryant, fresh off her winning campaign as Miss Orange Juice of Florida, or whatever the title was, she led a campaign to repeal this ordinance. The campaign was called Save Our Children. And here's a quote from her. "What these people really want, hidden behind obscure legal phrases, is the legal right to propose to our children that theirs is an acceptable alternate way of life." Does that appeal to children sound familiar from contemporary rhetoric? Now, that campaign by Anita Bryant was successful in its goal. It repealed the ordinance. They got 2/3 of the vote, by the way, supporting the repeal. And the ordinance wasn't repassed into effect until 1998. It took 20 years to come back. Then we had the AIDS crisis of the 1980s. And what that began to do was open eyes to say this can affect not only hemophiliacs like Ryan White or Arthur Ashe, but also famous people like Rock Hudson and Liberace. Now, some people might not have guessed about Rock Hudson. They might have guessed about Liberace. But the reality was these were people that they thought they knew. And now here's something new about them. And then the thousands of ordinary people afflicted by this terrible disease. And the families tried to hide it sometimes in the obituaries and the announcements, but sometimes they couldn't. And sometimes they couldn't hide it from themselves anymore. And it began to change minds and hearts. I think about the first AIDS quilt that made it very personal. It was started in 1987 with 1,900 panels in a famous public display in Washington, D.C. Today, you can, by the way, see all the panels online. It's all visible. And there are some 50,000 panels that have been created. But we also, beginning in the 80s and into the 90s, had pop culture moments that began to move the needle too. The first gay character to appear on major network television was in All in the Family in 1971, where one of our Archie, don't worry, it's just a dehumidifier. One of Archie Bunker's buddies in the bar turns out to be gay. A surprise to him, but opening the conversation. In 1989, there was an image of two men in bed the morning after. No physical contact shown, but implied, on the show 30-something. It caused the advertisers to flee the show. The first lesbian kiss on television was in 1991 on LA Law. You may not have guessed. The first gay male kiss wasn't until 2000 on the show Dawson's Creek. Ellen's big famous kiss in 1997 was coming out for both the character and the actress herself. And in 1998, the show Will and Grace premiered with two flamboyantly, or at least one flamboyantly gay character and one more reserved but clearly gay character. And in 2003, Queer Eye for the Straight Guy appeared on Bravo Network, showing that gay culture had something to offer to everybody. In Jewish life, beginning in the 1990s, you began to have the possibility of gay and lesbian rabbis out of the closet as gay and lesbian rabbis. You had the acceptance of same-sex marriages in Jewish communities. The bubble congregations of the 1970s in New York, in Chicago, and San Francisco that were made for LGBT Jews began to fade because now they could be full members of any congregation that's on the liberal end of the spectrum. Among the 85% of non-Orthodox Jews in this country, gay marriages, gay partnerships, gay rabbis, these are all accepted. In fact, in one of those formerly exclusively gay congregations, Congregation Sha'ar Zahav, which means Golden Gate, it's in San Francisco, they've actually had straight couples want to join the congregation because they like their approach to Jewish education and how they teach kids about Jewish families and so. So now they have to decide, do we let straight people in to our gay congregation? Well, that's a problem no one would have imagined 30, 40 years ago. So Jewish life has changed quite a bit. There's even some grappling with the gendering of Hebrew. After all, if you're non-binary or you're transgender, your pronouns change in English, but everything changes in Hebrew because it's a gendered language. The verbs, the adjectives. Are you son of so-and-so or daughter? There's no generic child. It's always male or female. So how do you call someone up to the Torah if they're non-binary, but they're not daughter of so-and-so or son of so-and-so? Well, one community in New York came up with the phrase, from the house of so-and-so. So that way you list the parents' names, but you don't have to gender the person who's doing the reading at the Torah. But it takes creativity, it takes responsiveness, it takes understanding the need and the challenge that's posed and trying to find a solution that feels both traditional and responsive and new to meet the needs of the people who are your community. It's not them, it's us that are dealing with this challenge. Even in Israel, the army accepted gay soldiers in the 1990s, and they accepted gay weddings done outside of Israel as like a transfer wedding 20 years ago. The Supreme Court said it had to be accepted. Now, some of you may know Sherwin Wine, one of our founding thinkers in humanistic Judaism, was himself what they called then a confirmed bachelor for a long time, although he had a partner for 30 years. There's a story that the congregation took a trip to London, and it was all couples traveling. There were, I think, 20 different couples that went. And 15 years later, one couple and Sherwin and Richard were the only couples that were still together out of all the ones that took that trip. But that shifted. By the time Sherwin-Wine retired in 2003, he was able to celebrate his partnership publicly as part of one of his retirement events. Now, this cultural shift led to a legal shift. In 1988, Chicago passed its first human rights ordinance, which prohibited discrimination based on sexual orientation in housing, public accommodations, and employment. It took 2 tries. They tried in 87, it didn't pass, and then it passed in 88. In 1995, there was an attempt to legalize gays serving in the American military that resulted in the Don't Ask, Don't Tell compromise, and it did rescind most of that Eisenhower executive order from the 1950s. Then in 2003, a case called Lawrence versus Texas. This one invalidated all of the anti-sodomy laws, which were opposed to private consensual sexual activity between adults. It was a 6-3 decision to eliminate those laws. By the way, maybe 20 years before, in 1986, a Georgia law against gay sodomy was upheld 5-4. Because of the long-standing aversion to homosexuality, they decided local communities could make that choice. But in 2003, that ruling changed things. And I'm just curious, how many states would you guess actually had laws on the books that were canceled by that Lawrence decision? It was 14 states. 4 of them specifically banned gay couples performing those acts, but 10 of them weren't gender specific or coupling specific. So theoretically, straight couples also might have been violating these rules. Intruding in the bedroom, well, that's one of the reasons it was banned. 10 years later, in 2013, the case of United States versus Windsor required the federal government to recognize state legal gay marriages. And finally, in 2015, Obergefell versus Hodges recognized same-sex marriage as a fundamental constitutional right, an equal protection everywhere, not just an option for the state to allow, but a requirement for the states to grant. And then we hit that high water mark of 2022, when the Respect for Marriage Act codified same-sex marriage into law, not just Supreme Court decision, but into federal law. And that bill was supported by 50 Republican representatives and 11 Republican senators. And living through those years, from early 2000 to 2022, we felt like this trend was inevitable. This is the way of the world. Do we even need a pride parade anymore? Well, we found another backlash, just like in the 70s, now in the 2020s. In 2022, Clarence Thomas, as part of the ruling overturning Roe versus Wade, said that the Lawrence case about sodomy and the Obergefell decision about marriage, those should be reconsidered. However, the Supreme Court has refused to reconsider those decisions. There have been requests to do so by Kim Davis, for example, the clerk in Kentucky who refused to grant same-sex licenses. Or this past March, the Idaho State House of Representatives requested that the Supreme Court review this, and they passed their bill making that request 44-26. Now, the 44 votes in favor were all Republican. There were 9 Democrats opposed, but 17 Republicans voted against sending it to the Supreme Court. Some of them said it's a waste of time, but some of them said this is wrong. So there's a split happening there. We have this new focus on trans Americans, especially kids, but also adults. You have attempts to ban surgeries. You have attempt to eliminate gender identity affirming medical care. You have requests for hospital records. You have administrative decisions regarding Medicare and Medicaid and military health care, and what's allowed and paid for it and what is not. And they've been rebanned from the military. It's been an in and out experience. They were banned from 1960 to 2016. Then they were allowed from 2016 to 2019. Then they were banned from 2020 to 2021. Then they were allowed from 2021 to 2025, and they've been banned again in 2025. Why this focus on trans Americans? Well, you saw even in those survey results that there is a proportion, even of the Democratic voter, that has a discomfort with that issue. And so it's a wedge issue, what they call something to split your coalition. It's a smaller minority. After all, if you look at gay Americans, that's a substantial population in many cities. But the trans population is, as I said, very small. The number of athletes is very small. So they're vulnerable. They're the odd liars out. And so they're easier to target. Aside from the regrettable ick factor that some people have in discussing surgeries and changing boundaries of M and W. We've seen a step back in the acceptance of pride in general. The pride displays and clothing removed from Target. Professional athletes objecting to having to wear a rainbow on their baseball caps or a band on their arm during that pride game. Even local governments objecting to running and showing pride flags during that month. One of these took place in Dearborn, Michigan, which is a very strongly Democratic area. But it's also one of the most dense population of Muslim Americans in the country. And they tend to be conventionally, traditionally religious. And so new gender identities and the acceptance of gay behavior for them is anathema to their religiosity. So it makes odd bedfellows. You get fundamentalists who go to Dearborn to burn Qurans to show how anti-Sharia law they are. But then they make common cause against the gays. And then we have the battles in schools, like the cases in Deerfield and elsewhere in the Chicago area. It's not just about accepting trans individuals and dealing with bathrooms and sports and everything else. It's the curriculum. It's the books in the libraries. It's the clubs that are allowed. We're targeting acceptance, at least some are targeting acceptance, but some are also defending it. Now, why? Why this backlash? Why are we forced to celebrate pride under persecution these days? Well, one challenge is that celebrating pride and celebrating LGBTQ acceptance is increasingly interpreted as the political stance of one party. Not a neutral issue, but a political issue. And therefore, it's inappropriate to require your political perspective in a neutral setting, like a school or on the government flagpole or at a baseball game. There's that old line, shut up and dribble. Leave my sports separate from the, I don't want to hear the politics during the sports, and if the rainbow flag is politics, then keep it out of sports, some would argue. Affirming the LGBTQ population, especially the T part of that population, the trans community, as acceptable is also seen by some as a religious stance, and therefore also inappropriate or in a forced endorsement. And it even feels oppressive to assume your acceptance in participating in a pride rally, a pride march, a pride activity in a school setting. Now, if we humanistic Jews heard a Jesus-heavy prayer event at a baseball game, we might be a little annoyed. But that's how people whose religion explicitly rejects the LGBTQ feel on Pride Day at the ballpark. They feel like you're pushing your religion on me, even though they push their religion on us all the time. Personally, I would check what the promotion is on that baseball game and maybe not buy tickets on the day that's going to bug me. But some people live to be annoyed. And by the way, my religion, such as it is, wants me to accept, to include, to celebrate the LGBTQ population, people and couples and identity and freedoms. That is my religion. It tells me to accept and celebrate. So it's a battle of two faiths, two beliefs, two values. So what do we do now? There are the court battles, and there is the public advocacy, from the public pride parade to school board meetings and rallies. We do what needs to be done, and to their credit, those Deerfield parents overwhelmingly were advocating for inclusion and acceptance. They were voting for school board members that would continue to do that, and that's their credit. And we have to keep our attitude up. When progress takes a step backward, it feels terrible, and it is. But shared historical progress that I shared tonight, and the shared historical progress that we've felt in our lifetimes, can highlight how far we've really come. It may be that the attitudes of some today are more like they were 10 years ago or 20 years ago, but we are not 30 years ago in the 1990s, or 50 years ago in the 1970s, or 70 years ago in the 1950s. Some things have changed too much for that to happen again. Are we happy? No. Can we find joy and solidarity to motivate the next struggle? Absolutely. And we have to have the courage to push back. I heard a case a couple years ago in New Jersey where a conservative rabbi had ordered a pride cake for their pride celebration at her synagogue from a kosher bakery. And when she went to pick it up, it turns out that the baker had not made it because an Orthodox rabbi had heard that they were making a pride cake at this kosher bakery and threatened to remove their kosher certification. Well, the conservative rabbi said, well, we want a kosher cake, we want kosher things too. And it was a battle. She found another kosher bakery willing to make the cake. But it was a battle of whose kosher wins when it comes to making the cake or not making the cake. And the baker just wants to make the cake. They just want to sell cake. The baker was neutral. They were willing to do it when it threatened their business, because some were threatened by the fact that this business might also make a rainbow cake once a year. Well, that made it a problem. I like to think back to the Jewish origin myth for the rainbow itself. As you may remember, it comes in the story of Noah, that after the flood, where it's been raining for 40 days and 40 nights, and the water has risen, and it takes months and months for the water to go down, finally, it opens. The ark opens, and God tells Noah that the rainbow is there to tell you that I'm never going to destroy the world with a flood again. Well, that's how some people are reinterpreting those rainbows on the baseball caps. They put Genesis 6, 7, and whatever, they're trying to claim it's just about that. But from our perspective, is the rainbow going to save us? No. But there may be times we need to buckle up in the ark. We need to deal with the flood of hate and intolerance. But then, just maybe, to draw on another icon of gay culture, the sun will come out tomorrow, and the musical will tell the truth. Well, I hope you at least learned something, drew something, find some strength in this story of how far we've come and how much pushback there's been, but also how much continuing pushing forward there is happening in the world. Again, I want to thank the Ratnaswamis for our oneg, which is appropriately rainbow themed. We'll see in a little bit. And thank our musicians as well. Our closing song, which is on the last page of your service, page 10, is Eifo Ori, Where is My Light? Appropriately, my light, whether it's rainbow colored or any color you choose, is in me and in you.
Tikvati bi, Eifo kochi, kochi
Once again, I wish you a Shabbat Shalom and invite you to wish a Shabbat Shalom to the people near you.